Hello and welcome again to Walkie-Talkie, a YouTube channel dedicated to getting lovely, calming nature walks, being in the sun, and talking about many strange and esoteric subjects. I am your host, Christopher, and this is my lovely wife,
Jillian.
And today we are going to be discussing the subject of, I guess you could call him infamous, Daniel Penny, the gentleman from the subway incident in New York. Before we talk about Daniel Penny, I think it's important for us to set the stage, so to speak. Gotta watch out here. We are by Frisbee golfers, which apparently are very common in Kapok Park, which I had never seen before. But Jill, you said you've seen Frisbee golfers. I called them frolfers before.
Yeah, I've seen Frisbee golf before.
Yeah, where at? In Jersey? Or where?
It's just different parks. It's just a park thing.
It's a park thing?
It's a stoner thing. I think a lot of the time I've seen it's like a stoner.
They do have a stoner subculture to them.
The first time I ever saw Frisbees for Frisbee golf was at a head shop. So yeah, it's a stoner thing. But I'm not saying those guys are necessarily stoners.
No, it seems to have been adopted by the mainstream. Frolfing has. It's pretty weird. But
I'm not looking down my nose at stoners either. I was at a head shop, so
yeah, really, we don't
draw
judge
your
anybody.
own conclusions.
You could call us classical liberals or libertarians in that regard.
Don't put me in a box.
No, I don't belong in a box. I refuse. Yeah. So now that we've dodged the frolfers, let's set the stage here.
Yeah, for people who've been living under a rock, who's Daniel Penny? Daniel Penny. I was living under a rock.
That would be a good name for the video title. Penny for your thoughts? No, I kid. So Daniel Penny was ex-military, and he was recently on a subway train in New York City, and he was witnessing another gentleman threaten other people on the subway car. He was threatening that he was going to hurt them. And we'll just keep it PG at that. This is a big controversy because Daniel Penny attempted to intervene when the man was threatening people. There was an altercation, and Daniel Penny put him in a chokehold, in which the gentleman was harmed, we'll call it, through the chokehold. So the subset of this is self-defense and defending others.
He actually did pass, right? He died.
Yes, he did. That's correct.
Okay.
The main discussion that should have come out in a healthy society would have been a discussion about self-defense, but given the fact that Daniel Penny was white and the gentleman who he had an altercation with was non-white, it became immediately racialized in our post-2020 society. There was a lot of controversy that went on. So there was a large trial that went on.
They brought up charges of second-degree murder, I think. Was it second-degree murder or manslaughter?
Yeah.
Manslaughter. There was manslaughter charges, I think.
Yeah.
And there were secondary charges of, was it negligent homicide?
Yeah, negligent homicide. That's correct. It's really weird because I've never seen a case where they try one and then when that doesn't work, they try another one. I thought you had to bring all the charges up.
They were brought up at once.
Okay.
They were all brought up at once. It was, what happened was the jury was out for a really long time deliberating on the manslaughter charge or second degree murder. Again, I can't remember which, but regardless, the bigger charge, the jury was out deliberating for a while. Mm-hmm. And when they came back, they said to the judge that they were deadlocked. And the judge was like, okay, let's just go on to the next charge and see how you guys feel about that one. Mm-hmm. That one came back way faster. The second charge was pretty much not immediate, but very quickly the jury came to the conclusion where they were unanimous and they cleared him of that second charge. Mm-hmm. And so he was fully acquitted.
So there was a big controversy over all of this, and there were a large group of people that were very angry. I don't know what to make of all this. I feel like people have whiplash from the BLM movement in 2020 and George Floyd's death with Derek Chauvin. Actually, Derek Chauvin's case will be being retried soon as well, as there's new evidence has come out about that. And we'll probably finish up this segment with that. But it feels to me like there's still a lot of racial tension in this country that was brought to the forefront once again through this case. And when he was acquitted, there was a large hubbub. It does feel to me like the BLM movement has been struggling. There was no rioting going on afterwards and no burning of any kind of cities or any of that. So it feels to me like that's fallen by the wayside, but
the Black Lives Matter people did call for rioting. They called for people to burn it all down, I think was one of the quotes, and that we needed to show our displeasure through violent protests. But then it was a big nothing burger. Nothing came after that. So I guess you're right that it does seem like they've lost a lot of steam.
Yeah, I think Americans have had time to digest all this, and people were angry about the George Floyd incident quite a bit. However, as time has gone on, I really feel like the truth has started to come out more frequently about cases like this, and there's an immediate jump from certain groups of people who are politically interested to push a narrative, and that's what I want to talk about today, how destructive that narrative is. I just feel like we need to lower the temperature in this country. I don't know if you're with me on this, Jill, but there's just so much tension between groups of people. And from my point of view, I understand that there are circumstances where someone can be wicked and malevolent based on someone else's race or gender, and those things are awful. But the idea that any violence that's done between two people is automatically defaulted to that idea is not honest and very frustrating to me. People over here doing a photo shoot.
Yeah, this looks like there are actually quite a lot of professional tools being used.
That's going to be a problem for us. You want to loop around and try the other direction?
I'm sure we can get through.
So, continuing our discussion. We wanted to talk about an incident that we saw on X yesterday, I believe it was.
Maybe go this way.
Go this way? Okay.
Yeah, right. Isn't there a way that it loops? I think there's a way that it loops in.
That's incorrect. There is not.
Oh.
That's why I was saying that, it's going to be a pain to get around this.
We did walk that way one time.
Well, it just goes out to the end of the park. We'll make a short episode today. So, there was another incident. It was yesterday. It was funny that the governor of New York by the name of Kathy Hochul was on a train for a coordinated photo shoot in which she had actors sitting down with her, posing, smiling, taking pictures, saying that everything is safe on the New York subways. Because obviously the Daniel Penny thing made quite a few people really, really upset. And she wanted to, assuage their fears and make them feel more at home on the subway. So, the most awful thing happened a short while after. You want to give a little summary of that whole spiel that we read this morning?
Oh, goodness. No, I don't want to give a summary.
I know, it's truly awful, actually. It really is.
Yeah, yesterday I saw that there was a woman that burned alive on a New York City subway train, and it was stated that someone may have lit a match, lit her on fire. There was a lot of conflicting reports coming out, but apparently it's been released that the person who lit the woman on fire was an immigrant from Guatemala who had been deported once before but came back in through the border. There's conflicting reports as to who the woman was. Early reports were saying that she was a homeless woman surrounded by booze bottles. I saw other reports today that claimed that she was a 29-year-old young woman who was not homeless and did not have any alcohol near her at all. So that we'll have to wait and see what comes out about who she is. But horrific incident where she was burnt alive. She did die, by the way. And
she was burned alive by whom?
By supposedly this person, this Guatemalan immigrant. And there were a bunch of people that filmed it, that walked by. There's a 1-minute video I saw today where the person was filming that person on the train burning while several people walked by over the course of a minute of the person standing there burning. And even several of the people were actual cops that were walking by while this was going on.
Well, that's truly absolutely awful. Could you ever film someone burning, or would you feel the need to actually intercede?
I just
do
can't.
Something about it.
When I was a little kid, I think like the first time I remember getting something like this was like at 4 years old, where we had a firefighter come into our preschool and tell us how to deal with a person being on fire. You know, is if you have a blanket, a coat, or anything you can throw on them, throw that on them and drop to the floor.
You want to walk out here?
And roll around. So it's going to go loop back into the park up there.
Okay.
Yeah, stop, drop, and roll. Everybody knows that. I've had firefighters showed up at my school every year until I graduated high school in 1997. So I've heard stop, drop, and roll my entire life. And my first thought would be I would strip off whatever I'm wearing. I'd strip down naked for this girl, throw it on her, and drop her down and roll her around and try to get the fire out. I couldn't believe that nobody would do that, at least that.
The video, the type of fire that's burning on her, and the fact that obviously she would have known to do something about the fire, like try to put it out, either rolling down or smothering it. But it leads me to believe that some type of accelerant was used to burn her, like either gasoline or something that was quickly combustible.
Yeah, and
otherwise
I think
it would have been easy to put out, right?
Yeah, I think that's why people were saying that there were booze bottles all around her.
Yep.
And I could see, like, I live not far from New York City. I used to go to New York City a lot. There were a lot of buskers in New York City and in the subways. So people that were performance artists on the street doing all sorts of crazy performance art. It's possible that somebody thought, or that people just thought it was performance art, doing some kind of, like those people that set themselves on fire for, what do you call that? Stuntman.
A stuntman, yeah.
Yeah. We just watched that movie with Bruce Willis and Billy Bob Thornton.
Bandits, I think it was
Bandits, called? Yes.
Yep.
And the one character sets himself on fire several times.
Yeah, he's quite awesome in that movie. I like him, that character.
So I can see that's possible, but the cops doesn't make any sense because I would think they would immediately ask for a permit if you were going to do something
We're
like
on
that
the side
on
of the road asking questions to people, and then we get the cops bothering us, but someone's on fire and they're like, this is fine. They walk by. So some people have brought up something referred to, or they're referring to it as the Daniel Penny effect. And you want to elaborate on that concept? What people are spouting online?
So the idea is that even though Daniel Penny was acquitted, his life has been turned upside down. I'm sure he immediately lost his job. Whether he got his job back or not is really not the issue. The fact is that he was dragged through the court system. Thankfully, he had some very powerful people take notice to defend him, to fund his case.
Well, he was ex-military, and people thought he was doing what they considered to be a noble action in protecting other people from someone who was going to harm them. I would consider that to be a noble action, wouldn't you?
I mean, sure, but my point is that if people don't notice, there's 8 billion people on this planet, and there's so many crimes every day, who knows?
Yeah.
How do you know that when you go to do something, if it's going to be scrutinized like that, maybe Elon Musk isn't there to back you up.
Yeah, good point. Well, the Daniel Penny effect is, in essence, the idea that people have become afraid of doing anything to help other people, whether it's helping them in some form of protection. People are unsure when they go to throw out people who are, squatting in their home. The police come and arrest them. When people, there's just so many examples of people doing good acts and they're sued. Someone is a home invader and impales themselves on a woman's knife while she was protecting herself, and she was forced to go to court for that, and it ended up in a very complex situation for her. So I guess the Daniel Penny effect can be summarized in people are afraid to do what they consider to be right and to protect civilization and order in civilization because they're afraid of repercussions. And I have a very hard time, someone who took classes in criminology when I was a younger man, in having any argument that refutes that. It ties in somewhat into, the broken windows theory a little bit about society and how it works, how when things are broken down, people tend to care less. So it's kind of like a symptom of that, but a different layer of that.
Well, that's a spiral that goes down, right? So the broken window theory, when people see broken windows in their development, their neighborhood, they take less care of their place, and then somebody sees your grass is growing really high, so why should I mow my grass?
Exactly.
And it goes on, and it's self-feeding.
Yep. So in this case, you can make the argument that having someone be lit on a fire in front of you and not really caring is far worse than the grass, right? I think there's a particular level of barbarism is the word I want to use to it, and an apathy that I find to be pretty gross and loathsome. I really do.
It's hard to know how you would respond in that moment. It's quite a terrifying thing to see. But people were already had fear for their person as far as getting hurt or killed. And so when you override that through courage, and then your reward is to be dragged through the court system, dragged through the mud. Have
yourself unable to work a job ever again. And this is exactly what we're talking about, the Daniel Penny effect. That's what it is. And it seems to be pretty prominent in our society by that behavior. So the gentleman who tried to prosecute Daniel Penny was a district attorney in New York by the name of Alvin Bragg. And that name might ring a bell for the court case he's got going against Donald Trump, which I believe has been denied or canceled at this point. But he went really hard after Daniel Penny. And I found that quite irritating, considering he is part of the problem. He was hired by the Soros Foundation, who poured millions of dollars into his coffers for his election campaign in New York. And it's part of this movement for the left of decriminalizing a lot of petty theft, which they did in California, and changing their idea about prisons, where you didn't want to keep people locked in prison, but they would allow them right back out on the street. It's kind of similar to what happened with the Guatemalan immigrant, except he was deported and came back in. But just imagine there's a turnstile where these people go in, they get their court hearing, they're right back out in the street a few weeks later. There's a circumstance with a gentleman in New York who was seen or videotaped pushing someone in front of a train a while back. That comes to mind regarding that. And Alvin Bragg is a part of that scenario. He is part of the problem and part of this movement that I believe there's been pushed back against lately.
Well, and you mentioned earlier the idea of squatters. That's another one that's been in the news, was a lady who called the cops on people who were squatting in her property that she owned. And the cops arrested her. Told her to put herself in the shoes of the person who doesn't have a bed.
Yeah, but she worked to own that bed, so she does have a bed. And couldn't they say the same thing if they invaded the cop's house. Like, isn't that insane to say out loud? It doesn't sound very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like justice at all to me. That's kind of what they're talking about, these people. It's like they've decided that the terms for justice have been set incorrectly, and they've decided to change them. And change them for criminals, not for the lawful. And I really think that in a more just society, people would have stood up and complained about that, but the Daniel Penny effect has had them sitting down, being scared, and allowing this stuff to continue.
Well, justice has been turned on its head in a lot of ways recently.
Yes, yeah, it has.
Maybe you might remember that Biden pardoned his son, who we have video of doing all sorts of heinous acts. Mm-hmm. He's been pardoned. Not only that, it was a blanket pardon. But in addition to that, there have been thousands of pardons he's been issuing and commuted sentences. And some of these people that he's been letting off have been really crazy. It's like child murderers and child rapists.
There was that one woman who embezzled money from helping children, and the woman who was selling cancer drugs. She was watering them down so she could get the same payment for them and be able to distribute more. So she was essentially stealing from sick people that were dying. And he commuted her too. That doesn't sound very just, does it?
Well, I think we're getting the picture that justice is being turned on its head. And it's that concept of rules for thee, but not for me.
Oh, yeah.
Because we know there's all these people in power that are getting away with wicked things.
Absolutely, they are.
And yet someone who's selflessly, courageously defending people on a subway train is getting nailed in the courtroom.
Yep. Now this the situation with these DAs, I think is changing. It's been a big push for people who are fed up with this injustice to primary these people and defeat them and get rid of them. A lot of these DAs that have this strange new ideological view. And that ideological view is the criminal isn't the bad guy. They're a byproduct of this rotten society they live in. You're the problem. That's what they have the idea of. And that's why they let these people out of jail and on the street, because you're the problem. In a way, they're saying to you, you deserve it. And I don't know what to say about that. Like, did that woman who was lit on fire deserve it when that immigrant did that to her? Like, what would possess someone to light someone else on fire, probably with an accelerant?
Here's the problem about even talking about what people deserve or they don't deserve.
Yeah, that word's
Our
awful.
justice system is supposed to work such that you are innocent till proven guilty. So there's no such thing as any person deserving to be lit on fire, no matter how heinous she was.
No.
We've been talking about that lately with the United Healthcare CEO. Oh, he deserved to get popped. Well, maybe he did, but that's not how this country works.
Who gets to decide that? And what kind of world is that where we really don't have an answer to that? Well, carry on this road and you'll find out. It's a bad one, though. It's the road to hell, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, that's not how our justice system is supposed to work. If somebody does something wrong, we are supposed to bring that to light and we are supposed to carry out justice in the way it is meant to be carried out through the legal system. Now, you might argue that the legal system is broken. And so now our job is to try and fix that legal system through the legal methods. And this whole nonsense about whether or not this woman was homeless and had liquor bottles all around her, or a young woman who was not homeless and had no liquor around her. I mean, it's like irrelevant. They're talking about whether if she was homeless and had liquor bottles, then she deserved it.
She was a living being and she did not deserve to be murdered. I mean, there's just nothing else really to get into for that. It's awful. It's appalling.
Murder is wrong. Taking justice into your own hands, even if she was a murderer. Vigilantism is against the law.
It's a proposition in California that they
36.
had. 36, right? There is a move to undo this new style of justice that the left has proposed. California, the bastion of liberalism, has reversed their Proposition 36, which...
Or Prop 36 reverses what they had going before, which was things like if you stole anything under $1,000, it was no longer illegal. And there were a bunch of other little petty theft where they basically legalized petty crimes.
Yep.
And so then people are running around and committing all these petty crimes because it's legal to do so. So then you have all these stores who are doing one of two things. We've got stores that have put normal items like deodorant behind locked glass.
Yep.
So you actually need to request assistance from someone to get the stuff out. Or if you're a mom and pop shop, you can't afford to do that. You'd have to hire more people to come in there and manage all that.
Yep.
You know.
And who has the overhead to hire a security guard? And while we're on the subject, speaking of the Daniel Penny effect, let's talk about security guards. If you can't really charge someone with a crime for stealing, and most likely if they do get charged, they'll just get a slap on the wrist and be let out. What is the incentive for a security guard to stop them?
Well, stop them and do what with them?
Arrest them, I suppose you'd call it. I mean, they can detain you on behalf of the owner because you're trespassing at that point. So they have a legal precedent to do that. But why would you? It's dangerous to you. You could be sued. There could be an altercation that could end up on the news. It could be George Floyd 2.0, and you could be the center of it, and you would be gone. Your company would be gone. So you can see the Daniel Penny effect. Before Daniel Penny even happened with these security guards, they were just allowing people to steal. And as a side effect of that, what happened to the businesses in California?
Oh, they've been closing left and right. Mom and pop shops were the first to go.
Yep.
Those just shuttered. And those don't make the news, by the way.
That's a shame.
But there's been plenty of other businesses, big corporate drugstores.
Yeah, CVS and Walgreens, I think.
And I think Denny's was something. Bunch of different places that had to close in California that made the news that they had to close because the crime was so bad. It was dangerous for them to have their employees come to work.
There you go. That's another aspect of this. When you walk out and you see a bunch of hooligans running in the store, grabbing everything, two thoughts come to mind. Is this safe? And the second thought is, why am I obeying the law? Don't you think that at least a little bit in your heart? Aren't you like, why am I working hard and getting this money when I can just steal like the rest of these people?
Why am I going broke to buy stuff on a 40% inflation cost?
Yep.
When these people just can walk in and grab it. Maybe
Yep.
I should just do that. It's kind of an extension of the broken window theory.
It all is. It all ties together. Absolutely. So smart. So it seems to me that the tide has been turning. I think that the BLM riots did not happen this time through. I think people are tired of the division and the fighting. I think that people in America are kind and generous and want to have a sense of fairness and equality in all people. I believe that's ingrained into them living here.
Would you say it's part of our American worldview?
Yeah, e pluribus unum. We're all Americans. We all need to be treated the same under the government. We can't have a two-tier system where people are getting special treatment because they're wealthy or because they're an immigrant or any other status group you want to give them. Everyone is either equal or they are not equal. And I really feel like that idea of equity is being fought right now in America. And that's what all this stuff is an extension of that idea, the change between equality and equity, which happened a few years ago, right around 2020. And I think it's playing out in our courts, on our streets, in corporations, pretty much everywhere. And it feels like people's sense of justice is being disrupted, and they're very angry about this. And I think you're seeing the beginnings of a backlash in that direction. So I just get that general feeling from reading the news lately.
Well, there's definitely a backlash. And I have a theory as to why all this stuff started going into place. Well, back when I was riding my bicycle through Camden, New Jersey every day, this was back in 2009, there was a budget cut for the police force in Camden. And it went into effect. I remember when it went into effect because I rode my bike the day before it went into effect. And then I rode my bike the day after it went into effect. And the day after, I had never really worried. Like, I was careful because I knew it was a dangerous area, but I was never really like worried for my safety. But after that cut went into effect, I never rode my bike that route again because it was just so obvious. As I was riding my bike, I saw outside of every corner, there were thugs standing at every corner that they were clearly there.
Thugs,
like
prostitutes. So yeah.
It was very dangerous all of a sudden, that there were people that were clearly enforcers that were out on the street, bruisers out on the street. And it was like being in a movie. Like all of a sudden I had entered a war zone and I never again rode my bike through. But my point is that this has been happening all over the place. The defund the police and when they legalized petty crimes and things like that. And I believe that they wanted to sow so much chaos that people would then be begging for the police state. They want to show people, oh, you don't want any cops, huh? You don't want to pay for the cops, huh? Oh, well, look what your life is going to be like then. Your life's going to be full of terror. You're not going to be able to go to the store. You're not going to be able to do anything. Don't you want those cops back? Mm-hmm. And we have a lot going on right now with robotics.
Yes, that's what I'm worried about is the RoboCop scenario.
Yep. And I think that they wanted to put us in a place where we were basically begging for that kind of world. And personally, I don't want that world.
Nope, I will not. You'll have to do it over my dead body. Sorry. Well, that was a long and convoluted speech about a very important subject that I feel is near and dear to my heart. We're about to come up on our favorite location in Kapok, maybe do some turtle feeding off camera. Is there anything you want to say to summarize? We went through a myriad of subjects there.
Yeah, no, I think that was like about covers it.
Me too. Let me just say, justice is justice, and if justice is unequal, which the symbol of the balance that you see on any courthouse says that what I'm saying is correct. If one group has priority over another, there is no justice. There can be none. And if we lose the ability to protect each other and keep order in our society, there will become a barbarism on the other end of it that no one is looking forward to having. So we need to deeply think about these subjects, about the Daniel Penny subject and RoboCops walking around the streets like they have in China right now. I've seen them. They're awful. It's not a future I want to live in. So let's finish by saying thank you for walking with us. We're going to see a little Evie over here. We're going to go take a look at the lake before we sign out for the day. Hi. Hi. Let's just get one good panorama view here. So this is Christopher and my lovely wife Jillian with another episode of Walkie-Talkie. Feel free to reach in the comments and leave us a comment about this video or any of the things we've talked about. You can yell at me if you disagree. I like that. I like to be proven wrong. Is that a gator over there, a giant one? Sure looks like it on the other bank. Man, he looks big.
Oh, wow.
You see him?
Yeah.
He's a big one. Please like us, interact with us online. Give us a subscribe if you get a chance. Just going to say we love you guys. Thank you for listening. And thank you for helping us walk and talk through this crazy world we live in. And we'll see you soon. All right. Love you. Peace.